Thank you for joining us to learn more about what it looks like to volunteer with a crisis cold weather shelter in our community. My name is Amanda Stadler, and I work with Community Partnerships, Ozarks Alliance to End Homelessness, which serves as the regional planning body for homeless services and funding for our area. I'm joined today by shelter coordinators Paige from Brentwood Christian Church and Ashley from National Avenue Christian Church, as well as Andy, who's a previous volunteer with Crisis Cold Weather Shelters. Each winter, crisis cold weather shelters open overnight to expand the number of available emergency shelter beds when temperatures drop in the Ozarks. Last winter, these shelters provided a warm, safe place to sleep for an average of 80 people per night. This effort is supported by several partners and simply would not be possible without the help of community volunteers. We know interested volunteers have a lot of questions about what they can expect while volunteering at an overnight shelter. So we're going to take a few minutes to answer some commonly asked questions. So Andy, we'll start with you. And if you could just share what your motivation was for volunteering with these crisis cold weather shelters.
Sure. Primarily with my role in the city, I was receiving lots of questions about what the role of the city should be and kind of what the issues were. And I felt it important that I understood those issues and learned as much as I could. And I felt like, the only way to do that was to get involved. So that was my initial thing was trying to learn about it. But like most volunteer opportunities I've had in my life, once you begin doing it, you find that it is really rewarding work. It's interesting and it is empowering. So I guess my motivation was to learn something about the problem so maybe I could help understand and do more about it. And then ultimately, I found it was really personally fulfilling for me. I had some fears going in because, I'm not trained in crisis mediation. I'm not trained in interpersonal de-escalation. And I was concerned about those types of issues and what I would do if we had those problems. And again, like most things, you find that those fears are relatively unfounded. While there are some real issues, there's ways that these other folks on the call can talk about. And I personally never had felt uncomfortable or at risk, and really found that it was a great experience and a great way to learn about an issue within our city. It is certainly true that the folks I worked with, many of us were new to this. Some had done it a little bit before. Many of us were new to it, but we do have to rely very much on the coordinators and the folks that do have some grounding in the program.
And I'll just note that I was a volunteer before I was a coordinator, and this is not what I do for a living. So this was something that I started out as a volunteer and then increased my participation in it. So on top of working my own full-time job. So one thing that I noticed, I was volunteering at a different shelter before we started ours. And I had a big fear about the, emergencies. What do we do during emergencies? But I realized that it wasn't my job to save anyone's life or anything like that, to know what to do in an emergency. It was my job to make sure those people are safe and to make the call, the actual phone call if someone needed services.
Regardless, there's oftentimes somebody who has more experience either with you in the building if you're new, or is a quick phone call away, who will actually answer their phone at 2:00 in the morning. And you can say, I don't know what to do in this situation, and they will help walk you through it. So, or they'll drive themselves down and help handle it on site. So because you always are working alongside at least another volunteer or staff person, you're never alone as the facilitator in the building. And you always have someone else that you can lean on for support, either by phone call or there in the room. Number one, the first thing that we did was hospitality. When people got there, it was about, yes, there's a kind of very administrative, we need to write your name down, we need to get you checked in, but it's also like, hey, how you doing? And just a few of the kind of, ground rules as far as, some of the COVID precautions that we had, which I think we'll get more into later. But then it was about can we get you a cup of coffee? Can we get you a snack? Can we show you to where the cots are? Can we show you to where the bathrooms are? That's just all hospitality stuff. And then that kind of was the evening hours. And some people just go straight to their cot and go to sleep, and you don't see them again until the morning when it's time to wake everybody up. And some people might, sit and chat with you and drink a cup of coffee or something. So it was, the evening hours is really about hospitality. And then it's just kind of making sure everybody is like safe and quiet and lights are out and everybody has an opportunity to go to sleep at night. And there's not a whole lot necessarily to that either. And then the volunteers usually have some way of alternating which one gets to take an evening, a nighttime nap. It's not like a full night of sleep, but it is a little bit of sleep. And then we wake everybody up in the morning.
A lot of our big need really is for those overnight volunteers. But there are lots of other support opportunities that don't involve that. So Paige, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so every shelter, since these are buildings that are used for other purposes that are just opening up at night. So a lot of them will need like a morning cleaning crew. If you would like to come in and help organize and clean up after everyone's left. We had laundry runners. So we had a professional laundry service who would launder all of our blankets and sheets every day. And so we had a volunteer they were a morning person. They were always up really early. So 7 a.m. they came and pick up all of our blankets and in bags. They didn't have to bag them themselves or anything, drop them off. And then they would pick up the laundry from the day before and drop it off right after, like in the mornings. The majority of the time, everyone is sleeping. You're talking 1 hour in the beginning when you're signing people in and getting them comfortable. It's exactly what Ashley was saying, hospitality. You're just they are your guests for the night and you're making sure they're comfortable.
As a volunteer, I liken it to being a flight attendant. It's a lot like being a flight attendant. When you're onboarding, there's a whole lot of activity. You're handing out blankets, you're making coffee, you're getting people comfortable. It's all about, getting it set up and ready for that. And so it's like taking off, then everybody goes to bed. And during the night, as both Paige and Ashley said, you're dealing with just little, it's dark, you might walk around, somebody might have a need because they can't sleep. So maybe they need to get a medication or something. So you have a few little things. And then again, when you're ready to land in the morning, there's the flurry of activity again, where you're making sure everything's put away and stowed, and the folks get off to their next destination. And so it's very much like being a flight attendant. And it's just as Paige said, I did a lot of reading and crossword puzzles during the night, and just was attentive to the issues that might arise, which are very few.
If you're on the streets and something happens, you don't have that support around you. You don't necessarily have someone who will call and help get you help. But that's one of the things that we offer by having these overnight shelters. It's not just that it's a warm place so you're not going to freeze to death tonight. There are like any number of other things that we can help because you've come in somewhere and because you're interacting with other human beings, that you can get services and that you can get the help that you need. We require everyone to be masked at all times, except for when they're actually sleeping on their own cot. All the cots were separated by at least 6 feet apart from other cots. And we generally, and if people were eating or drinking, obviously you have to have your mask off while you're doing that, but also kept people spaced out and separated for that, or asked them to do it outside. So I think as far as, the kind of 6 feet physical distancing, that was easy to accomplish. And masks, most everybody came in with their own mask, but we also had a case full. All of the different sites take very seriously what the CDC, what our local Springfield Greene County Health Department. We had multiple phone calls and emails with the health department to say, this is what we're thinking. Does this match up? There's a lot of good guidance from the CDC about homeless shelters. So basically we follow the information that the experts give us. And for the most part, all of our guests followed all of those protocols as well with no problem.
Yeah, and it is not optional. You know, there are rules that volunteers have to follow, just like there are rules that the guests have to follow. And masking is one of those. We had cleaning protocols. I had volunteers always, we always provided all the cleaning supplies at the shelter, and we always had volunteers cleaning in between, every hour or so. Just wiping down surfaces that were commonly used.
And it's not just COVID, too. It's hygiene in general, right? Because there's lots of issues. So I felt, in the mornings, we talked about having cleaning crews. We took every mattress, we sprayed every mattress down with antibacterial. We had the blankets were out. The blankets were laundered every day and changed fresh. The bathrooms, all of that was done. And again, because you've got a population that's at risk, and with their immune systems and everything else, and they don't have access as much to hygiene. So all the flu, the colds, just all of that is, I think it's really important to maintain the hygiene of the facilities. And I thought, again, we're a small one, so it was a little easier for us to handle, but it does kind of take a village to get all that done. And so, I worked a few overnights where I also did all the cleanup in the next morning, and that's a long haul for people. So I would say, for those that just say, I can't stay up all night, or I'm fearful of it, there's a role that can be played, certainly, to help with, because it does take a lot of effort to keep all of those protocols up. And the other thing is, I think it's important to have structure in the environment, and again, not just for COVID, but to have the structure to say, this is the way that we run the shelter, and these are the rules. And I think you find the population's very agreeable with that. And I never had any issues with it. Had to remind folks, sometimes you had to remind the volunteers sometimes too, that, you got to pull your mask up and keep your distance and that. But I think having a structure, and this is the way we're going to do things, and lay out those expectations really helps.
Personally, I was very concerned for myself. Like, I have a lung condition that I deal with. And so it was really important to me as a leader that we reinforce that kind of cleaning stuff, because I was also there all the time. I want to protect everyone around me, but I also, I can't do this work unless we, all work together and keep things, safe for everyone. So
in closing, are there just any other words of encouragement or advice that you would share for volunteers, maybe to address any hesitations that new volunteers might have, or from previous volunteers, what really was their reason for volunteering? And Andy, we'll start with you.
Sure, I would encourage anyone who thinks that this is something they would like to try to just do it. One is, there's a community conversation right now about our unsheltered, population and what we need to do. And if you want to be a part of that conversation, you need to learn more about it to form your opinions. And I think this is a great way to get in and understand the challenges people face and the challenges those who are trying to help face. And so if you want to be part of that conversation, and I hope you do, because it's something that we all need to try to get our arms around to do better as a community, this is a great way to get involved. And I think you'll find it very rewarding. And then I think you'll be better prepared to help, form that conversation to say, how do we help solve these issues as a community? So I would encourage anyone who's interested in this topic to jump in, get involved, and learn as much as they can.
For anyone that is interested or kind of wants to take that next step, we do have a volunteer interest form at Community Partnerships website. So that is cpozarks.org/coldweather. And that is a form that's shared across all of our shelter sites. And so then once you fill out that form, you'll be contacted by a shelter for kind of next steps in the process and for additional training. And there's also more contact information there. If you have further questions, just want to talk to somebody, that information is also on that page. So thank you for your interest and your time in watching this video. And I think I speak for all of us here today when I say that we hope to see you volunteering in some capacity at a shelter this winter. Thank you.